Hello everyone, this is Fuckface, my original character, or Fedora, whatever that F stands for. But of course I didn't make this atrocity, and this isn't why I've brought you here today. Today everyone, I'm going to be showing you how to use Photoshop to make an incredible thumbnail for your videos. Now obviously I am an expert at Photoshop, and I'm going to be going in depth on how to use all the cool little tools in it you're going to need in order to be able to make something awesome. Now, this video today is dedicated to one of my YouTuber friends, DaSalvian, who's recently expressed that he wants to make good thumbnails and whatnot. So I'm going to show him and you guys some of the techniques that I use, at least, to make my thumbnails. Now, mine aren't exactly the best in the world, but they're good enough. They'll do the trick, and I'll show you the stuff I use. Now I'm just going to close a few of these, just ignore these. Yep.
Plums.
Now, first things first, guys. The question is, why would you need a thumbnail for a video? How thumbnail can help? As you see this here, I'm going to use this picture as my example. You see this? Imagine if this was like for a video. See that? Okay. Yeah, that looks alright. That looks alright. But pray tell, what happens? Whoa, we get this instead. Now, doesn't that just look, for lack of a better word, awesome? Now, being able to make something that can really grab the viewer and draw them in is going to be important to getting people to watch your video. So without any further ado, or any of this more ranting and raving on bullshit, we're going to get started, and we're actually going to make a thumbnail for this video. How exciting! Now, first we're going to start off. If you've got Photoshop or GIMP, they work the same. Now, I'm using Photoshop CS4, I think. You can tell I'm good with this sort of stuff. But if you can't afford it, then you can download GIMP, or you can use PaintNet Online, which are free, and they work very similar, just with a few of the less fancy bells and whistles gone. So we don't really need to name it, but I'm going to name it Episode Icon. There we go. Default Photoshop, whatever. Just leave all of them like that for now, and I'll tell you all the perfect things you're going to need for sizing it up later on. Now you're going to want to set the background to being transparent, and I'll show you why. Right, okay, so you'll know if you've got a transparent background because they have these little weird squares on it. Oh, I should also stress this will be covering basic stuff, so obviously if you're already a Photoshop pro, there's probably not much I can teach you here towards tools and whatnot, but I'll hopefully teach you how to layer out a good freaking thumbnail. Right, now tools that you're going to need. Now, a great website that I use for getting the text and everything right and all my thumbnails is a website called Cool Text. Now, I probably shouldn't be giving away so many of my secrets here, but I must admit I do cheat and use this website a lot for a lot of the episode icons and whatnot. Now, you've got a whole variety of different texts and stuff you've got here, so for this one, let's go for... Okay, I'm going to go for this one, plastic. And the theme I'm going for is I'm going to keep it in the same sort of colours as Photoshop's own icon, so a sort of bluey colour. So let's go for this. Yeah, that's cool. We can choose different textures here as well. We can add a little texture feel and play about the effects until you get something that you really like. Now I'm going to keep it like that so it looks kind of like the Photoshop thing. You've got loads of different text to choose from and everything here, but for the sake of this episode I'm just going to go for the default one they give us. Now usually, to fit it good so it's large enough that it can be seen in the thumbnail, you're going to want to use text size 100. But if you want to fit more in, go smaller, but you're not going to want to go any smaller than about 60 if you're displaying it on a thumbnail or in a video. Oh yes, one more thing before I forget, guys. Also, whenever you make something on Cool Text, you want to go down to where it says File Format here, and you want to make sure it's set to whatever, PNG, GIF, whatever you prefer, Photoshop layer, but make sure it's a layer that has transparency on it. Because without transparency, it will have this like big white block on the back of it that will look quite unsightly. And I'll show you what I mean. Right, so now we have our two little thingamabobs. Now, you can get them on Photoshop the easy way just by clicking, dragging it, and dropping it off like that. There we go. We've got our two different thingamabobs there. Now, you see the one here without one looks way better than the one here with one. But Praygon, can you get rid of those backgrounds? Of course you can, random person with a stupid voice. Now we're going to zoom in here so we can do a little bit of fine work. Now, what we're going to do is there's a tool here called the Magic Wand, which is one of many ways to remove little backgrounds. You click on it like this and it should automatically highlight most of the white areas, but it won't get in these really little bits here or inside the O's. Then you right click, go select inverse, and then you right click again, and there should be an option called layer via cut. Okay, good bit. I come across a little hiccup there. It wasn't letting me layer via cut. So if you guys ever get that in Photoshop, all you need to do is right click, and there's an option here to resaturate the layer. It's up here. It's being grayed out now because I've actually used it. But if you ever get the thing where you can't layer via cut, just go up here, click resaturate the layer. So now we click on that. We select the inverse. Then we go layer via cut. And as you can see, that's going to get rid of most of the white backgrounds. Now you would have to go around individually to cut all those bits, but there's an easier way of doing that. You can use the lasso tool, which I'll show you later on. Or if you hold down click, there's a quick selection tool on Photoshop. You can use this to select individual pixels that you want to edit or cut out of the picture. This can also be used for changing the colours in cool ways and stuff like that, but I'm going to show you that in a second. So for now, we're just going to go for one that already has the background removed from it. So just highlight that and delete it. So there we go. Right. So we have a little thing here. We're going to delete these layers. Photoshop works on layers as well. Right, so we got a thing there. Now, at the moment, this is looking kind of plain. This would make kind of a shitty thumbnail, if I'm honest. Which is why we need to add a little bit of detail, something to draw people in. Next is a picture of the Photoshop icon, so people know what the hell I'm talking about in the thumbnail. So we're just going to go for something like that. So we... Again, just click and drag that in there. Now it's a bit too large, and it's slightly transparent. Isn't too bad. Get this here. Ta-da! There we go. Now, what else can we add to this to make it really stand out and be a really cool thumbnail? Now, a lot of Let's Players and other people as well like to put a picture of their face in it. Now, some people consider this kind of obnoxious, but at the end of the day, just kind of do your own thing, really. It doesn't really matter what other people think, so if you want to put your own face in it, then sure, go for it, whatever. Now, you're getting a special behind the scenes look at how I organise my files. Oh, aren't you guys lucky? But this is where I keep all of my stuff, and I keep it all organised whenever I need to use it. Now, where is it? I say that now, I can't find it. Ah, here we go. I keep here a special file where I have special Photoshop faces, if I ever need to use them and whatnot. So none of these faces would really suit. So... Do you know what? I think I'm going to go put the mustache gentleman in there. Just like that. Why? Because I can. Now the important thing to note with Photoshop as well is that layers, the one that's above... Okay. The important thing to note with Photoshop is the way layers work. Basically, if you drag a layer up and down, then it will move that up and down on the priority of how things stack. So for instance, if you see here, thumbnail's behind it, drag that back down, it's back above it. So obviously we want the thumbnail thing to be up here. And now we're going to move this around a little bit. And we're going to put this up in the corner there. And what can we use for a background? Alright, I'm back, guys. Sorry about that. To take a quick break to have a wee-wee. Now, I was going to use a picture of an explosion for a background, but I figured that would be a little bit lame and a little bit too predictable. I mean, to grab the viewer in, but one important point that I was going to say at the start but completely forgot to is also make your Photoshop... Your Photoshop? What? Make your thumbnail relevant to what is going on in the video. Yeah, there's no point if you've got a video about, say, car racing, doing a picture of a duck, unless the game has something to do with ducks, or maybe you've made some sort of joke or comment about ducks or whatever. But just make sure your thumbnail is possibly the highlight of the video, and try and turn that into a thumbnail. Just get creative. And another thing as well, Google Image is your friend for finding these sort of things you're going to need for your thumbnails, but at the same time, why? I don't think I've ever heard of anyone getting a video taken down for having a copyrighted image in there. Make sure that the images you are using, if it's someone else's work, you do try and get permission for it, and just be careful on what you use, because you don't want to end up pissing anyone off. Okay, we're all got to try and stay friendly friends. Right, now what I'm going to do is I decided this has got a bit too cluttered, so we're going to remove the mustache gentleman from this, and we are going to make our own background. To do that, we are going to create a new layer, and you can do that by clicking here, create new layer. Now this will make a blank layer that we're going to move right down to the bottom there, and we are going to add some cool effects to it. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the paint tool, and there we go, we've got our paint bucket tool, which you find, by the way, by just right clicking on the gradient tool. So we're going to simplify this. We're just going to add in a nice kind of Photoshop blue background. So there we go. Oh, look at that, lovely. So that immediately looks a lot nicer. But that's not going to end there. We're going to add in some pretty cool effects. Now if you double click on the layer, not on the name of it though, somewhere outside, it'll bring up this little thing where you can add in loads of little options to your layer. Now this is an absolute godsend, because this will affect everything from filled out things like this. So I could click on the little Photoshop icon and add some cool effects to it, which I think I might actually do. Now stroke effect, I'll show you what most of these do afterwards, but for now we're going to add in a gradient overlay. Now what a gradient overlay does is it adds in a gradient, basically, to make it look all shiny and nice. And as you can see, some of these look quite nice. Personally, I quite like this one. Then again, thinking about it, yeah, okay, I think we're going to have this one. Now what we're going to do is, you can set loads of different options here, like how much white to blue ratio you want to have. I'm going to have a slight bit of white and a lot of blue, I think. And we can reverse it around as well, so it's at the bottom and all that jazz. But if we have it at the bottom, it kind of makes the little tutorial bit a little bit difficult to read. So have that there like that. Okay, and that's all we're going to do with that for a while, just to add a nice little touch to it. And we're going to move our Photoshop icon over into this corner here. There we go, Bob's your uncle. And as it is at the moment, it looks pretty nice, but I think we can do better. So double click on the little Photoshop thing, and we can add some effects to this little Photoshop thingy there. We can make it look embeveled, embossed, which gives it a kind of buttony look. So that's good if you want to make something look like it's popping out of the page. Stroke adds a thick black mark around it that you can get to be big or low. And I'm going to show you something really cool you can do with text using this stroke thing. Inner shadow, inner glow, all pretty self-explanatory. They add kind of like a little light effect to it, which is actually quite useful here because we can make it look like light is shining in. And unfortunately, it kind of adds that little bottom bit around the bottom there, but you can edit all that. There's loads of different things down here, but we're not going to go too much into depth here. There are other tutorials that cover this sort of stuff way more deeply. This is just the basics of the basics to get you guys started. And add a drop shadow onto it. So we're going to add a drop shadow to show the light shining in through that way, and also just kind of makes it look a bit nicer. Now, we're not going to be including this bit of text in the final bit of it, but if you include some text, and we're going to make it white, and this is good advice as well if you've got a really multicoloured background and you need to make the text stand out. So you double click, you put your text in, you can choose any style you want here. So we're going to write, "Hello YouTube." Oh, it's just still in that style. Okay, let's give it a slightly better style. "Hello YouTube." Okay, it's still in that style, whatever. So we've got that there. So you got your text, but on that background, you can see it. It's kind of a little bit meh. Now, however, if we add a stroke onto it and reduce the size, it adds quite a nice little black outline to it. And for those of you that didn't know this, white text with a black outline can actually be read on any coloured background. So if you have something that's a really funky colour and you want to write something over it, just do that. Type your text out in white, then add the stroke effect on it with a thin or thick line, depending. I usually use just like size 1 or 2 on the stroke. And then you get something like that. And you can just resize that, or not be an idiot like me and actually make your text bigger. So there we go. We're going to delete that now. And put it like that, like that. Right. Now, sizing for it. Now, the size that I use for all of my thumbnails is a width of 1000 pixels and a height of 600. Now, if I am completely honest, I do not know if this is the optimal layout. I've read a long time ago when I first started YouTube that this was the best size to make your thumbnails, and it's worked for me. But if you guys, well, that's a bit big, zoom out of that, yeah. But if you guys obviously want to try and play about and do something else with it, then, you know, try for different sizes, look it up. It might be it changed, but I'm just way too lazy to be asked to actually look it up and change it and whatnot, because, you know, that would involve actually making videos properly. But there we go. As we are there, that's fine. Now, one thing I will warn you about this, if you do have it in this size, make sure if you have anything near the corners to move it along to the right and down a bit, otherwise YouTube tends to cut it off with this thumbnail size. Now, we're going to keep that with that. Now, it isn't too assaulting on the eyes, doesn't really mega grab people in, but it does the job, and I don't really want to be misleading. So that there, guys, is how you make a decent thumbnail. Now, as a few examples, I'm going to show you some other thumbnails I've made, because this one's a little bit bland, but it does the job. So here are some of the other thumbnails I've made using these techniques. And here you go, here's a few of some of my favourite thumbnails that I've made throughout my time of making videos. Now, this is one of the ones that I used the whole thing of putting the stroke around the side of all the words, as you can see here, to make them stand out a lot more. I'd recommend doing that on pretty much all of your words, unless of course you're using cool text for it, in which most of them stand out enough as it is. My Adventurer's Guide to Skyrim one, as you can see, is just a whole bunch of stuff layered over a map. That's a pretty easy one to make, but pretty fun to make. Go down here, we've got the Mugen one. I did that by making two separate colours, as you can see here, that I can just remove at will like that. And that effect there where I cut the Angry Video Game Nerd, I'm going to actually show you to do that now, because that's a really useful one. Now here we have a picture of Papa Franku. It's the same picture that I put on the face of SCP... Oh man, I'm going to look like Scrub for not remembering this, but it's the one that chases you if you look at his face. Someone write in the comments, tell me what one that is again. But I'm going to show you here to cut out someone's face, because this is quite useful. And I'm going to do this really rough, but if you actually take time to do it, it's a lot easier. Now you can use either the lasso tool, or you can use the polygon lasso tool. Now I'm just going to show you the lasso tool works. Basically, we'll start here on his chin. His chin. We're going to start moving up, getting his hair, trying to get as little of the background as possible. Get around his ears, through there. There we go. And then we got that, and then what you do is you're going to want to set the quick selection tool, and you're going to want to set minus, and you can use that to get rid of any of the background bits you've accidentally caught. So you see there, the outline is like shifting as I'm going over it. Set it to 1 pixel to make fine adjustments. If need be, click on your little magnifying glass and zoom right in on Papa Franku's face. So beautiful. And what you're going to do, press plus, just in case you want to add more sections. So I'm going to get this bit of his ear there. So I can hear. There we go. I did not make this Photoshop of his face, by the way. That was some other very talented gentleman. Stuff like this is a lot more difficult to do than the stuff that I'm showing you. You make someone's face all like this. But maybe I'll make a tutorial on that too. Okay, now this is going to be a really rough cut, but it will do for the sake of this, because I don't want to bore you guys by sitting here for ages. Now we just select the little box tool. Right click. And go down to this thing called Refine Edge. Now when you're on Refine Edge, it'll cut it out and it'll show you what it look like if you were to cut it, to make it its own layer. Now we can smooth it up here to remove some of the little bits there. Add a feather to it, which basically gives it a kind of ghosty look and helps clean it up a bit. Now the feather can make it look kind of ugly. I'm going to do this very quickly, like I said before, so it is going to look a bit naff compared to what you could achieve if you put a lot of time and effort into really cutting it out and getting it perfect. So I'm going to cut that, allow via cut, and then we can move Papa Franku's face over to here, and look at that. See? There we go. We have a cutout of his face, and we are going to hide that beneath here. So you'll just see a very transparent, a very hidden version of his face behind that looking in. And no one's going to know about that unless you've watched the video. Also, I quickly restarted the recording because I forgot one important thing, and that is when you save it. Now go down and save as. Now you're going to want to save it as a PNG file or JPEG if you're saving it for YouTube. I usually save it as a PNG. You're also going to want to make sure you make a backup of it as a Photoshop document. Now, having it as just Photoshop will do it as a PSD file. That's all you're really going to need if you're keeping it basic. So make sure you've got one saved. I usually like to set the Photoshop one and name it template, just in case I need to go back and make any changes or if I did done goof on it. Okay, there we go. And then you save a PNG one as well. And that's pretty much everything I've got to teach you guys for now. Now, I've probably missed a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm going to kick myself when I eventually upload this and realize I forgot that, this, that, and the other. So if you do have any questions, post them in the comments below, and if it turns out I have missed a whole butt ton of stuff, then I'm going to make a second video on this. But obviously, I have one more little trick for you guys. One more little trick I want to teach you. That is, if you're really untalented, just put boobs in the thumbnail. It works every time. You'll get like 1 billion views, even if it's just a 5-second video of you doing a poo. Anyway, I hope those tips and tricks helped you guys. Leave a comment below. If you need any help with anything, whoever you are, whatever you're doing, have an awesome day. You're awesome.